You are not here by accident. Something deep within you brought you to this video at this exact moment in time. And once you finish listening, you'll begin to understand why. Carl Jung once said that the soul doesn't always awaken through light, but rather through wounds. True awakening doesn't necessarily come during times of peace and stillness. It often arrives when something inside you breaks just enough to make you look inward. If you're going through a deep emotional pain right now, you might not fully realize it yet, but that pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to transform you. It is not here as a punishment, but as a catalyst for something bigger. There are clear signs that what you're experiencing is not just suffering. You're going through a spiritual awakening. One of the first signs of this is when the pain you're feeling begins to challenge the beliefs you used to hold as absolute truth. That emotional impact, the one that left you breathless, the wound that still throbs inside of you, it didn't only bring sadness or confusion. It also caused a crack in the way you perceive life. And through that crack, awareness begins to enter. What once seemed unquestionable, what once formed the foundation of your identity, now starts to lose meaning. The beliefs you built your life around begin to crumble, piece by piece. And yes, that collapse might have frightened you. It might have left you feeling lost or empty. But in truth, it was the beginning of something much deeper. It was the start of an internal cleansing. When pain shakes you from the inside, it forces you to confront things you had long avoided. Not because you're weak, but because you're no longer able to maintain a version of yourself that no longer reflects who you are becoming. That internal rupture is not a curse. It's a reconfiguration of your consciousness. It's a signal that your soul is no longer willing to live in unconsciousness. It's ready to awaken, no matter how much it hurts. That moment of rupture, although it may feel like an ending, is actually a rebirth. When pain begins to tear down the mental structures that once held you together, the experience is far from easy. You feel as though you're losing control, as if the ground beneath you is no longer solid. But that loss of control is necessary, because only by falling out of what is familiar can you finally come into contact with what is real. That pain doesn't only take things away from you, it also reveals things. You begin to realize how many decisions you made out of fear, how many relationships you held onto out of need, how many versions of yourself were crafted not for authenticity, but simply to please others or survive. This recognition is uncomfortable, yes, but it is also incredibly freeing. It's in that moment that you start to see clearly what was always there, but you had refused or were unable to see before. The mind will resist because change hurts. The ego will cling to the old, to the safe, to the known. But the soul, quietly and patiently, gives thanks. Because with every mental structure that collapses, a space is created. And in that space, something new begins to bloom. This new version of yourself does not come from comfort. It is born from inner cracking, from the pain you chose not to numb, but to confront, to feel, to pass through. That, although many people may not understand it, is a deeply spiritual act. It is your soul taking the wheel, guiding you forward. And even though the process may feel dark and uncertain, it is profoundly sacred. The second sign begins to manifest when something within you changes, not on the surface, but deep in the core of your being. It's when your sensitivity intensifies, sometimes so subtly that you don't even notice it right away. But gradually, unmistakably, you start feeling more, not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually. This shift doesn't happen randomly. It often begins in the aftermath of pain. Since that moment when suffering entered your life, something fundamental within you was altered. That pain didn't just change how you think. It awakened your ability to feel with greater depth, with sharper clarity. Suddenly, you find yourself more attuned to your environment, more alert to emotions, energies, and truths that once slipped past you unnoticed. What you used to overlook becomes impossible to ignore. And this isn't by chance. It's one of the clearest ways the soul begins to awaken. Deep emotional pain has the peculiar power to dissolve the mental and emotional filters that once shielded you from the world. It doesn't destroy you. It opens you. It strips away the armor, leaves you raw, exposed, vulnerable, but also profoundly receptive. In that open state, the superficial loses its grip. You no longer get distracted by appearances. You're no longer swayed by hollow words or empty gestures, because now you feel. You feel what resonates and what doesn't. You feel what's real and what's performative. You feel what lives and what is merely pretending to live. This newfound sensitivity may feel uncomfortable at first. It may even hurt. It can make the noise of the world unbearable and the chaos around you overwhelming. But it's also a gateway, a portal to transformation. Because once you're cracked open like that, you no longer move through life out of habit or inertia. You move with intention, with awareness. You begin to inhabit yourself in a new way. You start seeing the world with a depth and intensity that you never knew existed. What once felt flat and one-dimensional now holds layers of meaning. And although this transformation can be painful, it's also profoundly liberating. You begin to live on a different frequency, one that is more authentic, more aligned with your essence. In this new space, emotions are no longer denied or buried. They are honored, listened to. Wounds are no longer hidden away in shame. They are acknowledged and integrated into your being. Pain, once viewed as the enemy, becomes something else entirely. A teacher, a guide. The sensitivity that pain triggered within you wasn't a glitch in the system. It was a silent awakening, a subtle, energetic opening that nudged you to start perceiving the world beyond the surface, beyond what the eyes can see. Where you once reacted impulsively from the ego, you now respond from a place of depth, a place within you that you perhaps never knew existed. You begin to notice that conversations leave a stronger imprint on you. The energy of certain places either lifts you or drains you. Silence begins to speak louder than words. And while this can sometimes be overwhelming, it's actually a clear sign of inner evolution. You're no longer capable of living anesthetized. You can't numb yourself like before. Your soul simply won't allow it. And then something even more profound begins to happen. You realize that the pain no longer just hurts. It changes you. It softens you. It makes you more compassionate, more present, more awake. You begin to see things you once ignored. People you used to surround yourself with suddenly feel out of sync, disconnected. Decisions you once made without questioning now seem foreign, as though they were never truly yours. Paths that felt like obligations are now heavy, lifeless. They lack purpose. And what once seemed solid and secure slowly begins to crumble. Not because you're losing your way, but because you're finally walking awake. That's the real shift. You're not lost. You've just stopped walking in your sleep. And because of that, anything that no longer vibrates in alignment with your truth becomes unbearable to carry. The weight of inauthenticity grows heavier. The need for external validation fades. The urge to pretend, to conform, withers away. Not everyone will understand this version of you, but you no longer seek to be understood. You can't go back to who you were. The pain that cracked you open also opened a door that cannot be closed again. This wasn't a breakdown. It was an expansion, an irreversible expansion. And with that expansion, your pace changes. You can no longer rush through life as you once did. You can't fill your days with noise to avoid the silence, because now silence holds truth. Your body begins to demand more stillness. Your energy cries out for more presence, more listening, more pause. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of energetic necessity. You begin to protect your inner space like never before, because now you know how deeply you're affected by what you allow in. You stop tolerating connections that dim your light. You walk away from environments that pull you away from your center, not because you think you're better than others, but because you've learned what it costs you to lose touch with your essence. And after everything you've endured, you are no longer willing to give that up. This new level of sensitivity also unlocks something else, a kind of inner vision. You start to see patterns where there used to be only chaos. You start to sense lessons hidden within the pain. You begin to understand that the very thing that broke you also pointed you toward a more authentic version of yourself. You're no longer the same. The shift might not be visible to others, but you feel it. Deep within you, you know. Because now, you experience life differently. And in that deeper experience, you access a wisdom that was never taught, only remembered. Pain has made you more human, yes, but also more soul, more attuned to the invisible, more grounded in the essential, more loyal to your own truth. You've become someone who feels more, sees more, and lives more, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. The third sign appears quietly, yet profoundly. It happens when you begin to release the version of yourself that once defined you, without having a clear vision of where you're headed. One of the most transformative effects of emotional pain, especially when it serves as a catalyst for awakening, is that it breaks down everything that you no longer are. And it does so without asking for your permission. It doesn't come with a warning, nor does it wait for your readiness. It simply begins. Suddenly, almost without realizing it, you wake up one day and notice that the things that once gave you identity no longer resonate. You feel a deep, unexplainable detachment from the roles you played, the routines you followed, the beliefs you held so tightly, and even the dreams you once chased with passion. These things, people, places, habits, begin to fall away like autumn leaves, making room for something new, something sacred, something unknown. It's not something the mind chooses. It's something the body feels. A quiet but undeniable inner certainty begins to rise. It's as though your entire being finally acknowledges the truth that was waiting patiently beneath the surface, that you can no longer carry what once defined you. Not because it was bad, but because it no longer belongs. You've outgrown it. You've changed. You've evolved. This letting go doesn't mean loss. It means purification. It's not an end. It's an opening. It's space being cleared, not for something random, but for something more aligned with your soul. And yes, even if that something has yet to take shape, even if you find yourself suspended in a mysterious in-between, what you're experiencing is not emptiness. It's the sacred ground of transformation. It's the exact moment when your soul begins to reclaim the space that was once ruled by your ego. Letting go of what once defined you is one of the most silent and courageous acts of awakening. Because there are no guarantees, no clear paths, no external voices reassuring you that you're on the right track. All you have is a burning inner guidance, a whisper of truth that comes not from logic, but from the depth of your soul. And in that inner fire, you begin to see just how many things you are holding on to, not out of love or authenticity, but out of habit, fear, and the desire to be accepted by people or systems that no longer reflect your essence. You start releasing relationships where you can't fully be yourself. You walk away from roles that you fulfilled only out of obligation. You question the image you've built of yourself, one shaped more by trauma and survival than by truth and authenticity. And though it may initially feel like you're losing your identity, a deeper part of you knows that you're finally being set free. You no longer care about being understood by everyone. You care about being honest with yourself. Approval stops being your motivator. Peace becomes your compass. And that shift, that new way of seeing and choosing, is not random. It's the soul maturing. A maturity that doesn't come from age, but from breaking open and refusing to run away from yourself. You may feel lost, yes, confused perhaps, because the old has crumbled and the new has yet to fully form. But this disorientation is not a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that you're being reborn. You are learning how to move through life with a different kind of energy, one that flows not from the mind, but from the heart, a different center, a different frequency. And even when the world pressures you to define yourself, to explain yourself, to fit into a box again, you choose to remain in the unknown with dignity, because now you understand that the void is not emptiness. The void is the quiet space where what is real begins to emerge. And in that quiet, without even searching, you start to rediscover yourself. Not the version of you shaped by the world, but the version that always existed underneath. The essence you forgot. The you that needs no title, no applause, no validation to feel worthy. You begin to recognize yourself in the calm you once feared, in the stillness you now welcome, in the honesty you no longer suppress. You don't need to impress anymore. You only need to be true. And this shedding of your former identity, it's not escape, it's growth. It's your soul peeling away layers that have already served their purpose. And yes, there may be moments of nostalgia, moments where you remember the person you used to be, the dreams you once had. But right alongside that nostalgia is a new kind of peace, a quiet joy. Because what's coming into your life now isn't external, it's you. It's your essence returning home. It's your energy realigning with your truth. It's your authenticity stepping back into the light. And here's the most important part. You don't need to understand it all. You don't need a detailed plan or perfect clarity. All you need is to trust that inner pull, the one that leads you into the unknown, yet somehow feels more familiar, more honest, more you than anything that's come before. The pain didn't just change you, it purified you. It stripped away the illusions. It burned through the noise, so you could finally remember what you've always been, so you could come home to yourself. And now, all that's left is to walk forward, not with certainty, but with faith, not with fear, but with presence, not as who you were, but as who you truly are. The fourth sign is when you begin to feel a deeper connection with the invisible. It's not something that happens overnight, but rather something that awakens gradually, often after a period of profound emotional pain. You go through something that breaks you, shatters your world, and leaves you with questions you never asked before. And then, something inside you starts to shift, not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually. It's as if your soul, having passed through suffering, has become more refined, more attuned. You begin to sense things you never noticed before. It's like a veil has been lifted. You become aware of subtle patterns in life, what many call synchronicities. You start seeing how certain people appear exactly when you need them, how messages or signs seem to show up at just the right time. They could be a sentence in a book, a song on the radio, or even a random conversation you overhear. These moments feel too perfectly timed to be random. And while the old version of you might have brushed them off as coincidences, the new you knows better. The pain took away many things from you. It stripped you down, maybe even made you feel lost. But it also did something unexpected. It opened a sacred doorway. Through that doorway, you began to perceive a new kind of language, intuitive, symbolic, silent, yet undeniably real. The kind of language that doesn't shout, it whispers, but its truth is so strong that you can't ignore it. You also start to notice that your emotions are no longer confined to just you. You begin to feel the energy of others. You walk into a room and can sense tension before anyone says a word. You look into someone's eyes and you can feel the weight they're carrying, even if they smile and pretend everything's fine. You know when someone is hiding pain, not because they told you, but because you can feel it in your bones. And the strange part? You didn't study this. You didn't read it in a book. It simply awakened after you broke down. Because that crack in your soul, where the pain entered, also became the space where the light came in. A different kind of light, a new level of consciousness, a heightened sensitivity, a way of experiencing the world that you never had access to before. Now, you don't seek answers the way you used to. You're no longer chasing certainty. What you seek is something far more profound, a sense of inner guidance, of quiet companionship, of a presence that transcends what your hands can touch and your eyes can see. You probably don't tell many people about this, not because it's a secret, but because you know that words will never do it justice. This experience is deeply intimate. It happens in the quiet moments when your mind finally silences and your soul begins to listen. And what it hears doesn't always have a shape or form, but it always carries truth. A kind of truth that doesn't need proof because it resonates so deeply that you simply know it's real. You begin to trust your intuition in a way you never have before, not because you can explain why you feel certain things or why you just know something is right or wrong, but because ignoring that inner knowing is no longer an option. Every time you follow that intuitive pull, life responds. Life confirms it. Again and again, it reminds you that you are not alone, that something greater is walking alongside you, guiding your steps in ways you can't fully understand. This connection doesn't make you special. It makes you aware. It makes you present. And with that presence, your entire way of living begins to transform. You no longer search outside yourself for what you've already discovered within. You stop desperately looking for signs because you've become the kind of person who's naturally receptive to them. And in that openness, the answers come, not with force, but with grace. You begin to recognize that there's an invisible thread tying everything together, that every event, even the painful ones, had a place in the grand design, that every heartbreak, every loss, every fall was pushing you closer to the person you were always meant to become: more connected, more awake, more willing to live from your soul rather than your fear. And that is one of the clearest signs of spiritual awakening. You can no longer live disconnected from the invisible realms because they now live inside you. Over time, this connection becomes your refuge, not a place to hide, but a place that holds you steady when the world outside begins to tremble. It's like tuning in to an inner frequency, a vibration that soothes you, guides you, reminds you of who you are. And from that place, you begin to live. Quietly, intuitively, authentically. You become more present in the small moments, more attuned to subtle signs, more open to receiving what cannot be predicted or controlled, but can absolutely be felt. You stop forcing the path. You begin to move with what resonates, and you gently let go of what drifts away, without needing to know why. Because now, you trust that there is a greater order at play, one that doesn't always make sense to the mind, but speaks deeply to the soul. And something powerful begins to happen in that trust. Your energy shifts. And as your energy changes, so does everything you attract. Life starts to meet you where you are. When you are aligned with the invisible, the visible begins to organize itself around that alignment. You no longer need predictions, or validation, or guarantees. All you need is that inner voice you've come to recognize as your own. That gentle whisper that has been with you ever since pain cracked you open. That presence that now walks with you, silently, steadily, carrying you closer and closer to your true purpose. And the fifth sign is this: you've stopped fighting what you feel, and you've finally started to listen. When emotional pain becomes the beginning of your awakening, one of the most profound shifts is that you let go of resistance. You stop pretending that everything is fine. You no longer need to suppress the ache within you or keep up the illusion of being strong, composed, and untouched by pain. Instead, you allow yourself to feel, truly feel, without fear. You no longer run from your emotions, numb them, or try to bury them under layers of distraction or false strength. You begin to let them move through you, to pass through your body like a wave, unfiltered and unjudged. And while this might seem fragile from the outside, it is, in truth, one of the most courageous acts of the soul. Because it is only when you stop fighting your emotions that real transformation begins, not from a place of control, but from a space of deep understanding and presence. This kind of surrender is not resignation. It is spiritual maturity. It is the quiet recognition that pain is not your enemy, but your teacher. It's the messenger that arrives when your soul is ready to hear something essential. And once you begin to listen to this messenger, it no longer needs to scream. It begins to speak softly, with clarity, and you begin to understand, not just intellectually, but deeply, in your bones, in your breath, in the stillness of your being. That understanding changes everything, because when you stop fighting what you feel, you stop splitting yourself into fragments. You no longer have a part of you trying to move forward while another part is left behind, wounded and ignored. Now all of you becomes presence. Now all of you comes home. Allowing yourself to feel doesn't mean you'll remain trapped in the pain. It means you begin to acknowledge that every emotion carries a message, a truth. And when you honor that truth, the emotion no longer needs to repeat itself. Anger stops being something you need to control. It becomes something you need to understand. Sadness stops being a weakness. It becomes the cleansing water that washes away everything that no longer serves you. Loneliness stops feeling like punishment. Instead, it becomes a sacred space, a quiet temple within, where you finally begin to hear your own voice, where your essence speaks. And when you choose to live like this again and again, you begin to move from a different place, from an inner honesty that doesn't seek perfection, but seeks alignment, coherence. You no longer feel the urge to explain what you're feeling, or to justify it, or hide it. You simply live in it, embody it. And in that act of embodiment, something deep within you is set free. Because listening to what you feel is, in truth, listening to your soul. And when that happens, awakening stops being a distant spiritual idea and becomes an embodied experience. It becomes a way of living, with an open heart, with a receptive body, and with an awakened soul. Listening to your emotions means you no longer have to break yourself apart just to be accepted. You stop forcing yourself to keep going when your inner world is asking for stillness. You stop repressing what moves through you just to appear strong. You begin to live in alignment with your inner world. And though this may not be visible to others, it brings you back to yourself. You no longer need anyone else to validate your process, because the deepest validation arises from the silence within you. The silence that arrives when you finally stop betraying yourself, when you finally say, "This is what I feel, and that's okay. This is who I am right now, and that too is valid." And from that place, something entirely new is born. A quiet strength, a softness that stands firm, a self no longer built from defense, but from integration. Because when you listen to what you feel, you stop fighting your own story. And when the battle ends, healing begins, not with words, but with presence. Pain no longer defines you. It transforms you. It becomes the space in which your consciousness expands, where every part of who you are is allowed to exist. You no longer have to choose between your light and your shadow, because you now understand that both are essential to your awakening. You've stopped fighting yourself. And that, perhaps, is the greatest act of love you can offer your soul. Thank you for being here. If, while listening to these words, you felt something move inside you, don't ignore it. It's not random. It's not a coincidence. It's your soul recognizing itself. It's a reminder that you are not broken. You are awakening. Carl Jung once said that the encounter with oneself often begins with pain, because only through darkness do we truly learn to see the light. And if you are in that place right now, if you're walking through that darkness, you are not alone. You are standing at the threshold of a transformation that goes far beyond what can be seen or explained. You don't need to have all the answers. You only need to follow the thread of truth that is beginning to weave itself through your being. Follow it with patience. Follow it with awareness. And know, deep in your heart, that pain, when listened to, becomes wisdom. If this message has resonated with your journey, if it has put words to something you've been quietly feeling inside, I invite you to continue walking this path with me. Keep exploring. Keep returning to yourself with the calm, the strength, and the depth that only an awakened soul knows. Thank you for being. Thank you for existing. You are staring at this screen because something within you knows you are failing. It isn't your fault, yet it is your responsibility. There is a war unfolding inside you right now, and you have not even realized it. 3 silent battles are determining whether you will truly live or simply exist until you decay. Most people lose all three before they turn 30, and the worst part is that they never knew they were fighting. So listen carefully, because what you are about to uncover here was never taught in school, never explained by your parents, and is likely the reason you remain trapped in the same place you were 5 years ago. The first battle is against the voice in your mind. That voice tells you that tomorrow will be different, that this time you will finally act, that you only need a little more time. A lie. That voice is your most lethal enemy, and you feed it every day with excuses wrapped in delicate layers of hope. It has convinced you that planning equals doing, that thinking about changing is enough. It is not. As you read this, that voice is already searching for a way to weaken what you are learning. It will whisper that this is interesting, that you will apply it later, that you must finish other things first. It is a trap. Carl Jung described this dynamic with brutal clarity. The psyche repeats what remains unconscious and then calls it fate. You are living exactly that. You have spent years stumbling over the same inner narrative, still believing the problem lies outside. But here is what you do not want to hear. That voice is not yours. It is a collage of inherited fears, absorbed opinions, and forgotten wounds that settled in the shadows of your mind. It speaks with your tone, uses your words, but it does not represent you. It is the echo of everyone who once said you were not capable, of every failure you turned into identity, of every moment you chose comfort over truth. And the worst part is that you trusted more than you trust your own deeper self. When you have an idea, the voice arises first. When you want to risk something, it restrains you. When you attempt to grow, it reminds you why you shouldn't. It is your most loyal guardian and your most effective executioner. The paradox is cruel. The protection it offers is the same prison it constructs. Think about the last time you wanted to do something different. Change your job, begin a project, end a toxic relationship, anything. What happened? That voice handed you reasons to remain still. It told you it was dangerous, that it was not the right moment, that perhaps later would be better, and you obeyed. You always obey. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we become what we repeatedly do. So what does that make you? A servant to a voice that is not even real. The solution is not to silence it because you cannot. The solution is to recognize it, to see it for what it truly is: noise. When it appears, thank it for its opinion and move anyway. Act despite it. That is the first battle. You do not win by eliminating the voice. You win by denying it control. Every time you do something it tells you not to do, you reclaim territory. Every time you move with fear, instead of waiting for fear to disappear, you advance. Courage is not the absence of fear, but action in the presence of it. And here is the secret no one explains. The voice weakens with each victory, but it never vanishes. Learn to live with it, while knowing it does not command you. The second battle is the one you fight against, time itself. You believe you have plenty, yet half of it has already slipped through your fingers. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. The average human lives as if they were immortal, until one day the truth breaks through. They are not. And by the time that truth hits, it's too late to reclaim what has been wasted. Carl Jung understood this deeply. It isn't that we possess too little time. It's that we squander enormous amounts of it, and you've lost more than you dare to admit. How many hours have you handed to things that don't matter? How many days have you sacrificed on the altar of distraction? How many years have drifted away, while you waited for the perfect moment that never arrives. Time is not a renewable resource. Every second that slips away is a second that will never return. And yet you treat it as though it were infinite. Here lies the truth that paralyzes you. You don't know how much time you have. You might have 50 years ahead of you, or 50 days. You don't know. And that uncertainty should terrify you enough to move now. But instead, you turn it into an excuse to postpone what matters. You assume that because you don't know when your clock will stop, you can afford another day of mediocrity. Wrong. Death does not give warnings, and when it comes, it won't care about the plans you made. History's greatest figures understood this. They lived with urgency, with the awareness that every day could be their last. You live as though you've been granted an extension, and that illusion keeps you stuck in the same place. But the battle against time is not only about death, it's about the life you waste while waiting. Every day you fail to act is a day you gift to mediocrity. Every hour spent on irrelevancies is an hour you'll never use to build what truly matters. And the worst part is that this isn't a problem of lacking time, but of lacking priorities. You have time for social media, time for shows, time to escape yourself, but not time for what you genuinely want. The truth is that you have time. You simply lack discipline. Time is democratic. We all receive the same 24 hours. The difference between those who rise and those who fall isn't the time allotted, but the way they use it. Here comes the brutal secret. Time accelerates with age. Days become weeks, weeks become months, and suddenly 10 years have vanished, leaving you wondering where they went. Do you know why this happens? Because you stop living new experiences. Your mind erases routine. When every day looks the same, your brain compresses the memory because there's nothing meaningful to store. That's why childhood summers felt endless, and why last year felt like 2 short weeks. It's not that time moves faster, it's that you stopped living. The solution is simple, yet terrifying. Break routine, do what scares you, take risks, live experiences your mind cannot ignore. That is the only way to win the battle against time. You cannot stop it, but you can fill it so fully that when you look back, it was worth living. The third battle, and the most brutal of all, is the battle against yourself. Not against the voice in your head, not against the passing of time, but against the version of you that you refuse to release. That comfortable, predictable, mediocre version, built from excuses and avoidance. The version that clings to the certainty of misery rather than risk the uncertainty of genuine growth. Here is the painful truth. You are your own worst enemy. It isn't the system. It isn't society. It isn't your circumstances. It's you. You are the one who chooses to stay where you are. The one who chooses comfort. The one who chooses not to risk anything. And you choose it because change always demands a symbolic death. Becoming someone better requires letting the old identity die, and that idea terrifies you to the core. Human beings carry a natural resistance to transformation. We prefer familiar suffering over the possibility of something better. That is why people stay in jobs they despise, in relationships that drain their spirit, in lives that feel borrowed or forced. What is known, even if painful, feels safe. What is unknown, even if filled with promise, feels dangerous. Carl Jung expressed this with brilliant clarity. People will do absolutely anything, no matter how irrational, to avoid confronting their own soul. And that is exactly what you've been doing. You keep avoiding your own inner confrontation, because on some level, You know that if you truly look at yourself, you won't like the truth staring back. But here is the twist. You cannot win this battle by running from it. You must face yourself, examine your flaws without mercy, acknowledge every place where you have been failing, and decide that today, not tomorrow, is the final day of that version of you. Not tomorrow, because tomorrow is the favorite word of those who lose themselves in delay. Those who rise, those who evolve, act today. Even when they are unprepared, even when fear is loud, even when they have no idea how to proceed, they leap into the unknown, trusting they will build their wings along the way. You must do the same. Stop waiting to feel ready. You never will. Stop waiting until everything is perfect. It never will be. Begin now with what you have, exactly where you are. The battle against yourself is not fought in one dramatic moment. It is fought in 1,000 small decisions each day. Every moment you choose what is difficult over what is easy, you win a battle. Every time you take action instead of postponing it, you gain another victory. Every time you confront your fear instead of running from it, you strengthen the emerging self you are trying to become. But it works in the opposite direction as well. Every time you give in, every time you choose comfort, every time you lie to yourself, you lose ground in that inner war. And the truth is that these small battles accumulate. The sum of 1,000 small defeats becomes a wasted life. The sum of 1,000 small victories becomes a life of depth and meaning. The difference is not found in heroic gestures. It is found in the invisible decisions you make when no one is watching. Epictetus put it plainly. People are not disturbed by events themselves, but by the judgments they place upon those events. So the real question is this: what is your judgment about yourself? Do you see yourself as someone capable or as someone limited? Because that inner perception silently dictates every action you take. If you see yourself as someone who cannot, you will behave accordingly. If you see yourself as someone who can, you will also behave accordingly. Your identity shapes your destiny. So the question is, who are you? Not who you were, not who you were told to be, but who you choose to become now. Carl Jung taught that the self is not a fixed identity, but an unfolding reality that reshapes itself through consciousness. You can redefine yourself at any moment. The past does not define you. Your present actions do. And here is the truth almost no one tells you. These 3 battles are not fought once. They are fought every day, every morning, every decision, every moment. There is no point where you win them forever. Those who triumph are not the ones who succeeded once, but the ones who continue overcoming themselves daily. Consistency is what separates those who grow from those who merely tried, and consistency is not glamorous, exciting, or comfortable. It is often brutal. It is standing up when you feel empty. It is doing what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. It is moving forward when everything within you begs to stop. That is the real battle. It is not against external enemies. It is against the part of you that wants to surrender each time life becomes difficult. And here comes the part that hurts the most. Most people lose these battles because they do not even know they are fighting them. They live on autopilot, reacting instead of creating, surviving instead of living. They wake up, do the minimum, stay distracted, and go back to sleep. They repeat that for decades, and then wonder why their lives feel meaningless. The answer is simple. They never fought. They never confronted the inner voice, never claimed authority over their time, never released the mediocre version of themselves. They surrendered before beginning, and now they live carrying the weight of regret. Do not become one of them. The life you want exists on the other side of these three battles. There is no shortcut, no trick, no magical formula. You have to fight. You have to face the voice that restrains you, command the time that slips away, and let go of the version of yourself that no longer serves your path. Those are the rules. They are not negotiable. And if you choose not to fight, that is also a choice. It is the choice to settle, to accept mediocrity, to live a life that was never truly yours. So decide now. Are you going to fight, or will you surrender? Because time has already started running. The old voice is whispering, and the outdated version of you is begging you to stay where you are. What will you do? Here is the truth few dare to speak. There is no second chance. This life is the only one you have, and every day you refuse to fight is a day you offer to oblivion. The Stoics knew this thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius woke up reminding himself that the day could be his last, and that awareness made him act with purpose. You wake up and check notifications from people who do not matter. That is the difference. They lived with urgency. You live on pause. They understood that death is the price of admission. You pretend you have all the time in the world. The battle against the inner voice, against time, and against yourself is not something you can delegate. No one can fight it for you. Not your family, not your friends, not some cheap self-help book that promises change in a few weeks. This demands blood, demands sacrifice, demands that you stare into the mirror and admit that you have been failing. And that hurts. It hurts more than any physical blow, because it strikes the ego, the image you carefully built about who you believe you are. But that pain is necessary. Without that pain, there is no transformation. Without that fracture, there is no reconstruction. Those who avoid pain remain stuck. Those who embrace it evolve. Carl Jung explained that the path to individuation begins when the ego is wounded enough to finally listen. You have two options: struggle and suffer for something meaningful, or stay comfortable and suffer the hollow weight of a life without purpose. Both hurt, but one builds and the other breaks. You decide which pain you carry, because carrying pain is inevitable. Choosing which one is your responsibility. Those who win choose the pain of growth. Those who lose hold the pain of regret. And let me tell you this directly. Regret weighs far more. It is a slow poison that eats you from the inside, whispering at night what you could have become. That is the real hell. Knowing you had the chance and let it slip away. Think of the people you admire, the ones who achieved something real, the ones who left a mark. Do you think they didn't face these battles? Every single one of them did. The difference is that they won more times than they lost. They were not perfect. They failed endlessly, but kept rising. That is the key. It's not about never falling. It's about getting up faster each time. Resilience is not resisting blows without reaction. It is rising again, knowing another blow will come. The weak stay on the ground, waiting for help. The strong rise alone, with broken bones and shattered pride, but they rise. And here is the part Jung insisted on. You already know all this. Knowing without acting is useless. Knowing and not doing becomes complicity with your own collapse. So stop waiting. The ones who build their lives do not wait for inspiration. They create momentum. They move, and movement creates the energy that makes more movement possible. It is an upward spiral, yet someone must take the first step, and that someone is you. Jung taught that every ascent begins with an inner confrontation, a decision made before the conscious mind understands what is happening. The first battle against the inner voice is won with a ruthless choice. Stop negotiating with the part of you that fears change. When that voice rises with its logical arguments, its fears disguised as caution, its resistance wrapped in familiar reasoning, ignore it. Jung taught that the psyche grows through tension, and that inner conflict is not a curse, but a doorway to a more integrated self, a reminder that what feels like pressure is often the beginning of genuine transformation. Do not debate, because it always wins. It is faster, sharper, and aware of your weakest points, for it has lived inside you since childhood. The only way to defeat it is to refuse its battlefield. Decide before it reacts. Commit yourself in an instant and move. That is the strategy. Those who overthink lose, those who act advance. Jung insisted that transformation begins not with perfect conditions, but with the courage to act amid uncertainty. Start where you are, with what you have, and let your effort carve the path as you walk. The second battle, the one against time, demands something severe. Removing everything that drains your energy, your distractions, toxic connections, destructive habits, everything that steals life from you without giving anything back. Be merciless. Your life is an overloaded vessel, and without casting off weight, you will sink. Many sink because they lack the courage to release what has outlived its purpose. They cling to dead friendships, to work that diminishes them, to routines that numb their potential. They fear letting go because they cannot imagine who they might become without those attachments. But here is the truth Jung repeated. You cannot know who you are until you release what you are not. Time is your most precious resource, yet you give it away to things that do not matter. Every second counts. Every minute is irreplaceable. Use your time as if it were gold, because it is. The third battle, the struggle against your own fragmentation, is the longest. It is not won in a day, but in 1,000 days. It requires discipline, a word many dislike because it sounds limiting. Yet discipline is not your enemy. It is your freedom. The undisciplined remain slaves to impulses, emotions, circumstances. The disciplined choose their path and walk it regardless of how they feel. Jung expressed this truth simply. Freedom appears when the self stops hiding from responsibility. When you command yourself, you command your life. When you cannot, life commands you. That is the difference. It is fought in small decisions, rising when the alarm rings, doing the work without motivation, keeping your word, even when no one is watching. These small victories build something greater than your present identity. Now comes the uncomfortable part. You must choose. You cannot read this, feel motivated for minutes, and return to your old life. That is emotional self-indulgence, the illusion of progress without substance. Many consume ideas that make them feel temporarily uplifted, but never change anything. If that is your intention, stop here and return to your comfortable mediocrity. But if you want change, if you are tired of the version of yourself you carry, then listen. Change begins now, not tomorrow. When this ends, do one thing, just one, that brings you closer to who you want to become. Not something grand, something small but real. Tomorrow do another, and the next day another. Build momentum, for momentum is your ally. An object in motion tends to remain in motion. Become that object. These three battles are not won through heroic gestures, but through consistency, through doing what you said you would do until it becomes your nature, until the inner voice loses power, until time becomes your servant, until the mediocre version of you fades into a distant memory. This is what separates those who rise from those who fall. Not talent, not luck, not circumstance, but the will to continue when everything inside wants to surrender. Viktor Frankl lived this truth and carried it into the written word: endurance. When we reach a point in life where we can no longer reshape the world around us, Carl Jung taught that we are brought face to face with a far greater challenge: the task of reshaping ourselves. And unlike those who are truly imprisoned in circumstances beyond their control, you are not trapped in a concentration camp. You are not enclosed by walls you cannot break. You carry within you a mind capable of reflection, a will capable of decision, and a spirit capable of transformation. You possess tools, opportunities, openings, and paths. You have no excuses left, only the fear you continue to obey. And fear holds no real authority except the authority you willingly surrender to it. That is why this moment, right now, becomes your moment of truth. You must choose whether you will continue living as the same fearful version of yourself, repeating the same reactions, the same doubts, the same paralysis, or whether you will finally decide to fight. And I will not lie to you. Choosing to fight will hurt. It will tear through the illusions you built to protect yourself. It will expose every wound you kept hidden. It will be brutal in ways that make you question your own strength. There will be days when you feel so exhausted that surrender seems like the only rational option. Days when the voice inside you, the one that whispers you are not good enough, will rise louder than ever and temporarily control your entire direction. Days when everything feels meaningless and empty. But these days are not failures. These are the initiations. They are the sacred thresholds every human being must cross. They are the defining moments that reveal who you actually are, beneath your fears, beneath your habits, beneath your excuses. Those who surrender during these moments return to their starting point. They circle endlessly, living the same year over and over, calling it a life. But those who persist, those who continue walking, even when the road becomes a personal hell, those individuals emerge on the other side, completely altered. And Carl Jung understood this path intimately. He knew that the road to inner paradise always leads first into the depths. There is no shortcut, no escape, no bypassing. You must walk through your own darkness if you want to reach the place where your soul is trying to guide you. And no one, absolutely no one, can walk that path in your place. The three inner battles are already waiting for you. The old voice is already whispering its familiar narrative. Time is already moving forward, and the old version of you is already resisting every step of progress you attempt to make. So decide now, fight or surrender. But whatever you choose, own it without looking back. Do not complain later. Do not blame your parents, your past, your circumstances, or any other person. If you lose, it is because at some level, consciously or unconsciously, you chose to lose. If you win, it is because you made the decision to fight when it mattered. Simple, brutal, real. And if you have made it all the way to this point in the video, It says something very important. You have already chosen. People who give up never reach the end. They quit halfway, drifting toward the next distraction, the next excuse, the next comfortable escape. But you stayed. You continued. That reveals something powerful about you, even if you cannot fully see it yet. Now, I need you to do one more thing. Something small, but symbolic. Something that seals the decision you just made. Subscribe to this channel and activate the bell. Not because I need it, because you do. You need reminders that shake you awake. You need these teachings appearing on your screen exactly at the moments when you are about to collapse, when the inner voice is gaining territory, when time is slipping through your fingers and mediocrity is quietly trying to reclaim your life. Every video is a strike against that mediocrity. And if you truly want to win these battles, you need that strike week after week. Now go to the comments and write exactly this. I choose to fight. 3 simple words. When you write them, you will see them. And when I see them, I will greet you personally. It is not a game. It is a public declaration of intention. It is a commitment that echoes beyond this moment. You are telling yourself, and everyone who sees it, that you decided to move, that you decided to rise, that you decided to confront your own shadow. And that declaration carries power. Spoken words disappear. Written words stay. They remain as evidence, as memory, as a promise you made to yourself. Do it. And if you know someone who is drowning in these same battles, someone trapped inside their own mind, imprisoned by their own mediocrity, share this video with them. Do not keep it only for yourself. Knowledge that is not shared eventually dies, but knowledge that is shared becomes a spark in someone else's darkness. And there may be someone out there who has been waiting for this exact message at this exact moment to finally awaken. Your entire life, you were taught to believe that your darker behaviors were flaws, that every mistake, every impulse, every reaction that didn't fit the expectations of others was a sign that something was wrong with you. But what people never understood is that those same behaviors that make you feel guilty are actually the clearest signs that your soul is not ordinary. Carl Jung often said that the very thing that embarrasses you the most is what God is trying to reveal to you, because the places where you feel the most shame are usually the gateways to your deepest transformation. So before you blame yourself again, you need to understand something essential. There are certain behaviors that look negative on the surface, but only appear in souls that are being called from within. And today, you're going to uncover 5 of those behaviors, the ones that seem wrong, out of place, or unacceptable, but are actually direct messages from God. And if you recognize yourself in even one of them, it's because this message is speaking directly to you. The first one is your spiritual impatience. There are moments when you simply cannot wait. Something burns in your chest, your mind speeds up, and there's a restless energy pushing you forward, urging you to move, change, shift, or take a step, even when you don't fully understand what that step is supposed to be. You can't tolerate slowness. You can't stand when things get stagnant. You feel suffocated when you stay in places where you no longer grow. And of course, people judge you for that. They call you impulsive. They say you don't know how to stay still, that you lack calm, that you rush everything. But what they don't understand is that your impatience is not a psychological flaw. It is a spiritual signal. That sensation shaking you from the inside doesn't come from stubbornness. It comes from the soul. It's as if something within you knows you were made for more, as if an invisible force were pushing you toward a destiny you cannot see yet, but can already feel. That's why superficial things irritate you. That's why empty conversations drain you. That's why being surrounded by people who settle for the bare minimum feels unbearable. It's not arrogance, it's intuition. It's your spirit whispering to you, this is not the place. This is not where you grow. This is not where you belong. And here is the part almost no one dares to say out loud. When God wants to awaken a chosen soul, He doesn't give it peace. He gives it movement. He removes comfort. He disturbs its routines. He shakes its life again and again until the soul finally understands that it wasn't born to remain asleep. This is why, even when you try to calm yourself, you can't. Even when you try to convince yourself that you're fine where you are, something inside you begins to stir again, pushing, knocking, insisting. That impatience is the spirit pushing open a door you're too afraid to face. It's the evidence that there is a path you still haven't taken, a purpose that's calling you, a bigger version of yourself trying to emerge. It is the inner movement that appears only in souls that are not meant for mediocrity. The discomfort you feel is not punishment. It is direction. It is guidance. It is preparation. And the very fact that you feel it so intensely means that you are being called to rise, to evolve, to step into something greater than anything you've known so far. That restlessness is sacred. It is the echo of the life you're meant to live, insisting that you stop pretending you belong where you already outgrew your own skin. Behavior number 2 emerges when you pull away without offering any explanation. There are days when you simply vanish from the world without warning, when you don't answer messages, you don't feel like going out, you don't want to talk to anyone, and you lock yourself inside a silence that only you can understand. And even if, from the outside, it looks like something negative, like a cold attitude, a strange habit, or a sign of emotional detachment, in reality, it is a spiritual reaction that very few people are capable of recognizing. You distance yourself because even if you can't put it into words, your soul begins to feel saturated by things you once tolerated without effort. Empty conversations that drain your energy, dense environments that feel heavy on your chest, people who demand more than you can give, expectations that no longer represent the person you are becoming. It might seem as if your body disconnects, but what is really stepping away is your spirit from everything that is no longer aligned with its path. And although many judge you, thinking you're exaggerating, playing the victim, or trying to isolate yourself on purpose, what is truly happening inside you is far more delicate. Your sensitivity activates, alerting you that there is an emotional overload building inside you, one that you must release before it consumes your peace. You step back because you need to return to yourself, because your energy collapses when you force yourself to remain in places where you no longer belong. Your soul becomes exhausted when you stay surrounded by people who cannot hold your essence. And yes, others may misunderstand it, twist it, or label you incorrectly, but none of that changes the deeper truth. Every time you withdraw, you are answering a divine appointment with yourself. You are not running from the world. You are fleeing from everything that tries to confuse your spirit, drown your intuition, or silence the quiet voice within you that keeps trying to guide your steps. You pull away because you need to remember who you are when no one is watching. Because in the stillness, your mind begins to clear, your intuition rises, and your spirit finds its place again. God does not speak to you in the noise, the chaos, or the arguments. God speaks in whispers. And to hear those whispers, you need space, you need emptiness, you need solitude, sacred solitude that restores your inner balance. That is why, when you suddenly distance yourself, it is not rejection, it is protection. It is not indifference, it is sensitivity. You were not created to remain in places where your soul feels suffocated. You cannot keep forcing yourself to fit in when your spirit already knows that place is not for you. You cannot keep giving energy when nothing around you replenishes the effort. And even if others never understand your need to disappear from time to time, you know what happens when you return. You come back different, clearer, more stable, more connected to your purpose. Every moment of withdrawal works as an internal restoration, a spiritual restart, a reminder that your peace is more valuable than any social expectation. Your need to step away is not a flaw. It is a mark of transformation. It is the way your soul cleans itself, protects itself, and prepares you for the next chapter of your journey. No ordinary heart feels this need. Only chosen souls require this silence to hear what comes next. Then comes behavior number 3. You explode before the right time. There are moments when your emotions spill over without meaning to, not because you are a bad person, nor because you have a terrible temper, but because you have been carrying feelings inside you for far too long, feelings no one sees, emotions no one notices, weights no one imagines. Sometimes you say things that later weigh heavily on your conscience. Sometimes you react more intensely than you intended. Sometimes anger, frustration, or inner pain break out when too much has accumulated. And of course, people around you interpret this as a negative behavior. They say you lack patience, that you're too intense, that you dramatize everything. But what they fail to understand is that you don't explode out of rage. You explode out of saturation. You were not born to swallow your emotions. You were not born to pretend nothing is happening. You were not born to endure silences that slowly kill you inside. Your soul is too sensitive to hide what it feels, too honest to fake calmness when something inside you is breaking. When you explode before time, you are not showing a flaw. You are showing a boundary that can no longer remain invisible. Very few know that chosen souls feel with a different kind of intensity. You do not process emotions like others do. You absorb everything faster, deeper, stronger. Injustice wounds you more. Falsehood weighs on you more. Anything misaligned with your inner truth affects you on a level most people cannot understand. And when you try to hold all of that inside, your body begins to speak for you. That emotional outburst you're ashamed of is not immaturity. It's your spirit warning you that you're carrying too much. God did not give you a cold heart or an indifferent spirit. You were given a soul that feels, that perceives, that detects every detail others overlook. That is why you explode when you can no longer handle the weight of other people's energy. That is why you break when you carry guilt that does not belong to you. That is why you collapse when the world asks you for more than you have left to offer. And even though it hurts, even if you feel guilty, even if you hate that part of you, the truth is that this eruption is a sign of something sacred. It means your soul refuses to keep betraying itself. It means your spirit cannot tolerate environments that break your energy. It means your emotions are trying to guide you out of places that silently harm you. That explosion is not a loss of control. It is a release from the control others had over you. You are letting go of what you can no longer carry. You are saying enough without even realizing you're saying it. You burst ahead of time because your soul detects danger before your mind does. It recognizes lies before words are spoken. It senses injustice before the facts appear. It feels the drain before exhaustion hits. And even if the world sees it as bad behavior, you know the truth. Every emotional eruption brings you closer to your authentic self. Each one shows that you are no longer willing to betray your inner truth. Each one reveals that something inside you is awakening, even if that awakening hurts. Chosen souls cannot bear burdens that do not belong to them. They break in order to begin their rebirth. Behavior number 4. You struggle to fit in with people. Since you were very young, you've carried a quiet feeling that you don't quite belong anywhere. It doesn't matter if you are at a gathering, at a party, at work, or even surrounded by people who genuinely care about you. There's always this subtle distance inside you, a sense that you're present, but something in you isn't fully there. And many times you convince yourself that this is your greatest flaw, that something in you must be broken, or that you simply never learned how to socialize correctly. But what no one ever told you is that this difficulty in fitting in does not come from a defect. It comes from a higher state of awareness. You don't fit in because your soul can no longer tolerate empty conversations, environments built on appearances, or the heavy energy of people who move through life on autopilot. That discomfort you feel is not shyness, and it is not strangeness. It is spiritual sensitivity. You see the truth behind people's masks. You can detect falseness in seconds. You notice hidden intentions long before anyone else becomes aware of them. And when your inner self perceives these things, your body contracts, your energy withdraws, and your spirit quietly asks for distance. That is why others think you are quiet, reserved, or difficult to read. But you know that none of those labels truly describe you. You simply cannot force yourself to vibrate in places where your soul finds no meaning. You were not designed to blend in. You were designed to awaken. That recurring feeling of, "I don't belong here," appears every time your inner being recognizes that the space you are in does not nourish your purpose. And even if it hurts, even if it makes you feel alone, even if you sometimes ask yourself what you're doing wrong, the truth is far more powerful than you realize. Your soul doesn't fit in because it is being prepared for something different. What feels normal to most people feels uncomfortable to you. What others call fun feels empty to you. What others tolerate slowly drains you emotionally. You're not difficult. You are aware. You're not strange. You are awake. You're not antisocial. You're selective with your energy because you've learned that not every environment deserves your presence. And even if others don't understand it, you can feel that forcing yourself to fit in would be an act of betrayal, a silencing of the parts of you that have been trying to emerge for years. Souls that are chosen don't come into the world to blend in. They come to illuminate. That is why they don't fit, why they feel different, why they appear disconnected from what everyone else calls normality. You are not alone. You are being separated, shaped, refined. What you interpret as a flaw is actually the inner compass guiding you toward your true people, your true purpose, and the life that genuinely belongs to you. Behavior number 5. You criticize yourself too much. Almost no one knows it, but you are your own harshest judge. No matter how much you advance, improve, heal, or accomplish, you always feel that you could have done more, that you could have done it better. You analyze yourself. You question yourself. You correct yourself. You question yourself again, and you end up exhausted by your own thoughts. Sometimes you punish yourself for mistakes that others didn't even notice. Sometimes you stay replaying a sentence you said, a gesture you made, a decision you took, as if you were obligated to inspect every detail of your life under a harsh, uncomfortable light that you yourself are holding. And from the outside, that looks like a destructive, exhausting, negative behavioral pattern. But the truth is very different. That excessive self-criticism does not exist because you lack self-worth. It exists because your soul knows exactly how far you can go. You don't demand more of yourself out of ego. You demand more because something deep inside you knows that your life carries weight, that your decisions matter, that your path is not just any path. A part of you senses that something great is waiting for you, and that is why you do not allow yourself mediocrity. That is why it hurts when you fail yourself. That is why it is uncomfortable when you settle for less. What no one understands is that your self-criticism does not come from a feeling of inferiority. It comes from a feeling of purpose. You don't judge yourself because you hate yourself. You judge yourself because you intuit that you are meant for more. And that intuition, even when it overwhelms you, is one of the clearest signs that you were set apart for a different path. People without purpose live calmly. They live without questioning themselves. They live without looking inward. But you can't. You analyze because you perceive. You correct yourself because you feel. You observe yourself because you are awakening. It is not punishment. It is awareness. It is not a flaw. It is sensitivity. It is not insecurity. It is expansion. Of course, sometimes you go too far. Sometimes you push yourself to the point of breaking. Sometimes you forget that you are learning, that you are growing, that you are evolving one step at a time. But even that intensity is a sign. Your soul wants to grow faster than your external life can keep up with. And that is why every mistake feels so painful. Chosen souls have something in common. They cannot live asleep. They cannot accept just any version of themselves. They cannot settle for the first answer they find. And you are like that. You question everything. You review everything. You examine everything. Not because you want to punish yourself, but because you want to evolve. Your extreme self-criticism is not a bad trait. It is an indicator of awakened consciousness. It is proof that your spirit no longer wants you to repeat the same old patterns, that it no longer wants you to live on autopilot, that it no longer wants you to settle for what does not represent you. Your inner demand is the clearest sign that God is shaping your character so you can sustain the life that is coming. If you made it this far, then on some level you already know the truth. There is nothing wrong with you. Those behaviors you always assumed were flaws. Those moments when you felt broken, strange, or out of place. None of them were signs of weakness. They were signs of purpose. Every emotional outburst you thought you had to apologize for, every quiet retreat where you disappeared into yourself, every moment you felt unable to fit into the world around you, every doubt that consumed you late at night, and every impossible standard you demanded of yourself were all part of the same inner calling that has been guiding you long before you understood it. Life doesn't reveal its messages through perfection. It reveals them through the things that hurt, through the things that disturb you, through the parts of yourself you spent years trying to hide. The moments you believed were evidence of your brokenness were actually invitations, subtle signals pointing towards something deeper within you. And when you look back, you'll realize that each uncomfortable moment was shaping a strength you didn't have the language to describe yet. If something in this message resonated with you, if it gave you clarity, if you felt that sudden vibration in your chest that rises when a truth finally finds you, then I invite you to stay. Subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and leave a like, not out of routine, but because this space was created for souls like yours, people who are learning to recognize the meaning behind their own inner storms. And to seal this message, I want to ask you for something simple but powerful. Leave a phrase in the comments, a phrase that will act like a spiritual declaration, a reminder of who you truly are. Write it, declare it, let your own words echo back into your life. I am not a flaw, I am a sign. When you write it, you begin to acknowledge it. When you acknowledge it, you begin to believe it. And when you believe it, something within you begins to awaken.